This story comes to us from FoxNews.com. Comedian Bill Maher slammed woke culture and said that defunding the police and ignoring the theory that the coronavirus came from a Chinese lab due to fear of being called racist are examples of how wokeness will get people killed. Maher said on Real Time Friday night, "Let me give you an example. You said you think it doesn't get anybody killed? I think it does. Defunding the police, I think, came from wokeness, and it will get people killed."
Joining us now from New York, Kat Timpf of the Gutfeld Show and a host of Fox Nation. And Kat, what's your take on Bill Maher, who's been a big-time Democratic donor, scolding some of his fellow liberals for excessive wokeness?
Well, I think he's completely and absolutely right. And I have seen some pushback to what he said. I saw a piece in USA Today by Kirsten Powers saying, actually, no, there isn't enough apologizing. And there's a difference between accountability and cancellation. And in theory, that could be true. But in practice, almost always what we see is the accountability that the mob demands is cancellation. And then so more and more people pile on, because if you don't pile on, then people will turn on you and say you're racist, sexist, homophobic, etc.
How dare you not pile on? You know, it's always
Right.
more interesting to me when a comic or a columnist or a commentator, at least occasionally, tries to take on those who would be the natural ideological allies. And Maher is right. We keep hearing from some of the voices on the left that things are horrible in this country, never been worse. And compared to the era of segregated schools, of no gay marriage, or people were going to jail for growing pot, the country is a lot more progressive, but maybe you're not allowed to say that for some reason?
Yeah, I really don't understand why, because factually it makes no sense. We have heard people repeatedly say it's worse than ever. You know, Kevin Hart even saying white, supremacy is at an all-time high right now in this country. That is quite obviously not true. And that doesn't mean that everything's perfect. That doesn't mean that you can't still want things to change or talk about things changing. But again, progressive used to mean progress and allowing for progress, and it's the enemy of it in many cases, not just because it won't recognize the progress we've made already, but because, how many times have we seen someone have a tweet from 10 years ago, and obviously they're a new person, maybe they were a teenager back then, and they have changed, but they're not allowed to have that progress. They're canceled anyway.
You know, when I was growing up, there were no black news anchors on TV, and there were no leading black actors and entertainment shows and so forth. I've interviewed Bill Maher. He's a kind of an iconoclast. Do you think part of his motivation here is, obviously he's entertaining, he makes it funny and get ratings, but he feels like a lot of this wokeness is hurting his side, making the liberal movement look bad?
I think that it absolutely is. I think it is certainly hurting his side because, look, all of us are human, right? And by definition, that means we're not perfect. So everyone has at some point said something that maybe wasn't the nicest thing or maybe was offensive. And if we really start to need to hold people to the standard of perfection, absolutely nobody is going to be able to meet that standard. So that's a really tough standard for the party to be setting for people in general.
Right, yeah. Perfection is a hard standard for any of us to meet, especially those who talk a lot on TV and eventually going to say something dumb.
Right.
The basic thing here is Bill Maher is talking about that the mainstream media has got this thing called wokeness. And that wokeness, people that are woke are going to get everyone killed. He's talking about, the defund the police. Ignoring the theory that the coronavirus actually came from a Chinese lab, because you might be called racist against Asians. He says all of this is going to get people killed or get people hurt. And who was it? I think it was CC Dubs that said, America's not woke. They're like ostriches with their heads in the sand. Well, Bill Maher is saying people are woke, and that's what's going to get people killed, and that's what's going to get people hurt. So I don't know. I want to hear from all of you out there. Are you woke? I read this story, and I'm not woke or something. But that's the gist of the story, is that Bill Maher is saying that people that are woke are going to get people killed. What do you all think?